The UK election is just 2 weeks away, and the latest polls are projecting a heavy defeat for Rishi Sunak's Conservatives. One poll suggests Sunak may become the first sitting Prime Minister to lose his own seat. CBC's Anna Cunningham is at College Green in London, right across from the British Parliament. Anna, tell us more about the latest polling.
Well, Natasha, these headlines are certainly a nightmare for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his Conservative Party. And it does seem that the gap is widening because for more than a year now, in fact, the opposition Labour Party, which is led by Sir Keir Starmer, he's a former human rights lawyer, the former chief prosecutor, they have been in the lead. But what we saw overnight was a trio of polls bringing really bad news for Rishi Sunak. In fact, one of those polls is predicting that the Conservative Party could do worse in this election than in 1997 when Tony Blair won power for Labour. And it could leave them with just 53 seats. Just to give you a bit of context for that, back in 2019, Boris Johnson won for the Conservatives with 365 seats. So it would be a huge drop. Some of the newspapers today, the British press, using words like bloodbath and wipeout and saying that this would be the worst result for the Conservatives in 100 years. Another newspaper adding another century to that and saying 200 years. Look, Rishi Sunak, Natasha, has been continuing on the campaign trail. He's been out on the water down in the South Coast talking about immigration, saying that he's got this policy to send undocumented migrants to Rwanda. But he's saying that on the same week where we saw just on Tuesday more than 800 undocumented migrants making the Channel crossing to the UK. And I think the issue here really is that the voters are saying, well, the Conservatives have had 14 years in power to sort these things out. There's also another problem for Rishi Sunak, and it comes in the form of Nigel Farage. You may remember him from the Brexit years. He was a strong Brexiteer. He led the UKIP party. Well, he is now the leader of Reform UK, and he is actually pitching himself in his run in this as the equivalent of Canada's Reform Party back in 1993 and the Conservative wipeout there. I don't think it's going to come to that. Farage and his party may win a couple of seats, but it really at the moment does look like the polls are indicating this is certainly Labour's election to win. Natasha.
Well, Anna, as you indicated, the Conservatives have been in power since 2010. They've had 5 sitting prime ministers. This would be, if they do lose, the biggest defeat in 100 years. Why are they losing so much popularity?
Yeah, well, I think certain extent it has to be to do with the policies, of course, and the British public saying, you know, you've had all this time in power and we're still facing issues with education, the NHS, the National Health Service, facing very long waiting lists. Also, you know, things like migration as well is an issue that people are talking about. But scandals as well, interestingly, come into this. And I think it's kind of soured the British public's view of politicians. One of the scandals which happened during the Boris Johnson era, of course, was called Partygate at the time. Those parties held in number 10 Downing Street during the COVID lockdown. And Natasha, just very briefly, today we are hearing of developments of another potential scandal, I think probably is the best way to put it. The gambling watchdog is now looking into the Conservative Party's director of campaigning in this very election over a bet allegedly related to the timing of this general election. Well, certainly the timing for Rishi Sunak of that couldn't be worse, but it will play into the hands of Labour, who are hoping that the public vote for them on July the 4th. Natasha.
Anna Cunningham in London. Thank you so much.